I was a founding member of one of the biggest websites of the mid-2000s, but I doubt you'd believe me. The reason for that is because you haven't heard of it. As far as I know, I'm the only one left who has, and that's half of why I'm finally breaking down to tell my story now, nearly a decade after one of the biggest sites on the internet was removed from existence along with seemingly everyone who was involved with it. I doubt you'll believe me because even I sometimes think I might have dreamed it up in the shock following my accident in the summer of 2006, but I simply can't fool myself into believing the 2 years of time I sunk into www.wallhorse.com was a fever dream or a product of a traumatic head injury. It was just as real as the semi that blindsided me or the months of PT following, but let me start at some kind of reasonable beginning. Sorry. Wallhorse began as a pet project between a college buddy of mine, Al Carpenter, and a guy who always went by the screen name, Ceiling Jockey, who Al had met on a web design forum while he was in his last year of high school. I met Al in second semester of freshman year. We were both in a programming class for our major and were completely above the course level in terms of skill and sort of hit it off talking about Unreal Tournament after a particularly quick lesson. I got absorbed into his group of friends, and because I got to know Al and his friends, I got to know Wallhorse. At the time, Wallhorse had about 2,250 active users, mostly from colleges in the US. While not a particularly impressive figure in terms of numbers, the amount of growth and activity it was showing from word of mouth alone was worthy of attention. A lot of younger people don't understand the climate of the internet in 2003. The web was metamorphosing out of its original form of chat rooms and dial-up and slowly transforming into the amazing thing you browse so casually today, but there were definitely growing pains. A huge part of the internet was still a mess in terms of web design and functionality, and most people were still acting like it was 1998. This was the time period where you started to see a number of startups become huge. To give you an idea, MySpace went live 2 months before Wallhorse did. So the story as I came to know from Al and his friends was simple enough. Al hated having to sort through garbage to find the interesting stuff on the internet, and threw together a really basic and sloppy web page design that allowed visitors to rate website links by giving them thumbs up or down. He'd taken this idea to a forum where he'd met Ceiling Jockey, a guy with a lot of experience as an admin who thought Al had a pretty interesting idea, but suggested integrating an account system that would allow users to submit their own websites and links and keep track of the content they liked and those that submitted it. Wallhorse ended up launching in July of 2003, with me joining in February of 2004. As I said, it already had a pretty dedicated user base by then, and Al had 4 other guys besides him and Ceiling Jockey working on it by then, and as I got more and more involved, eventually became the 7th member of the team. Al was actually kind of shitty at web coding and design, but Ceiling Jockey and the other 4 covered his weaknesses well, and Al had a talent that was rare for an internet-savvy person at the time. He was a good businessman. He'd put out a bunch of lines throughout the school year and we'd gotten a lot of traffic and interest from a number of bigger forums at the time. I recall getting a huge spike in traffic from Something Awful right before finals week that pushed us over 15K members. After that things began to accelerate. I decided to room with the other members of the Wallhorse team that summer instead of going home, and after bouncing around helping the other members of the team as I could, I became a sort of de facto community manager, relaying and filtering the feedback we were getting from our very quickly expanding group of users. The site began to incorporate some social media aspects, like heavily customizable profiles, and our first few power users started to emerge by the end of summer. We started advertising heavily through Google and banner ads, and it seemed like almost overnight we had reached 150,000 users. The site was starting to generate money at this point, and I was shocked to be pocketing $1,000 a month from my work while going to school. Al was starting to come into his own too, and actually dropped out of school by October of 2004. He was spending a lot of time working with Ceiling Jockey on the platform, but even more in correspondence with dozens of websites about advertisements and even renting ad space on Wallhorse for more capital. We hit it big in January of 2005 when Al took a big risk and bought a news piece on Wallhorse that got circulated on AOL and MSN's homepages. It cost him a lot of time and $5,000, but we went from 500K to 1.5 million registered accounts almost overnight. We had to buy new servers and the service was destabilized for nearly 2 weeks. And despite that, we were still registering record numbers of accounts and our traffic put us in Alexa's top 100 by February 1. Finally had the guts to go full-time with the site after I bombed my finals that May, and was making $8,000 a month right out the gate. Of course, there were problems. Al had run into issues dealing with some of his newer employees and had to fire 2 of them within a month of their hire. More pressing though, Al and Ceiling Jockey were disagreeing more and more about the direction the site should go. Al was starting to get calls from people with lots of money who were very interested in what Wallhorse could become, and Ceiling Jockey did not like that. He wasn't exactly a frequent face on the site's user sections, but he did interact with them some, and the fact he was still essentially anonymous added an aura of mysteriousness to the site's most enigmatic employee. Come to think of it, I don't even think I ever knew where he lived at that time. I know Al was upset about having to deal with sending the guy's pay to a German bank, but he never did say exactly where he was from. Anyway, to Al's credit, he waited a damn long time before he finally started looking seriously at buyout offers. By this time it was spring of 2006 and Wallhorse had hit an all-time high of 22 on Alexa's ranking, and we had national attention. Television shows were putting name drops to our service in episodes. There were a couple pop songs that had referential lyrics, and it was insane to be in the eye of the storm. So it came to no one's surprise that Al accepted a buyout offer, but everyone was shocked when it came at $700 million. We were ecstatic, and Al threw a huge party at our office for everyone on the team, and we had a blast. That was Friday, June 2nd. I went home to tell my folks the good news that weekend and came back to the offices on Monday to a rude awakening. Al was stepping down effective immediately and there would be a round of layoffs. I was incredibly lucky to keep my job, but nearly 3/4 of my coworkers were not. I had to watch the friends I had made over my years at Wallhorse pack their desks up on the heels of the site's greatest success, but that was not as shocking as Al personally asking me to tell Ceiling Jockey that his services were no longer needed. I very reluctantly signed onto our company IM system and tried to lay it out as well as I could to him. To his credit, he seemed to handle it fairly well until he asked me to put Al on for him. I called up Al, but his answer was a firm no. So, he snapped at me. He said this was wrong and it was a thing that would be regretted. I honestly couldn't say I disagreed with him. I apologized for all of this being so sudden, and he signed off before I could even finish with that. The whole thing left a sour taste in my mouth, but I figured that sometimes not everything worked out as you hope, so I rolled my office chair up from my desk and thought about what I was going to have for dinner that night. And that's the last thing I can remember for nearly 4 months. It's a little anticlimactic, but the doctors told me I was hit by a semi that ran a red light. They say it's a miracle I'm still alive, and that it's twice the miracle I wasn't brain damaged to the point of being a drooling vegetable. They say I was driving a 1993 Dodge Dart. They say that my girlfriend was at the hospital within the hour and came to visit every day she could while I was fighting through the worst of it. They say that they're never heard of Wallhorse.com, that I dropped out of college 2 years ago due to failing grades, and that I was an assistant manager of a computer repair store. I had bought a brand new 2006 Charger 3 days before the accident. I hadn't had a girlfriend since I was in high school because I was too busy with the site. I guess I was lucky in my own way that the doctors attributed my muddled memories to retrograde amnesia. It kept them from letting me think about it while I was in the hospital. I can't tell you how surreal it is to have a girl you've never seen before in your life sit next to you while you lie in a hospital bed with tubes down your throat, tell you how it's gonna be alright while she holds back tears. Getting visits from friends you never had who are genuinely afraid for your life, and to have the biggest thing in your life simply cease to have ever existed. No one I've spoken to since has heard or displayed any knowledge of Wallhorse, and after a while, I gave up on it altogether. It's been 9 years since then. It took me a year of physical therapy to walk again, and another year before my coordination was good enough to earn my driver's license again. I got married 4 years ago to the woman who stayed with me through all of that. I've been working from home doing computer repair supplemented by my disability income. Honestly, I might have actually settled into thinking that Wallhorse never really existed, but I received an email 3 days ago that banished any chance of that notion. It was sent by cj@wallhorsa.com and contained only the magnet link to a BitTorrent file. Throwing any caution to the wind, I downloaded and installed the file. Heart racing, I opened it and the familiar Wallhorse Company IM client popped up on my screen. With trembling hands, I typed in my old username and password, and in a few moments, I was connected. Immediately, an IM notification flashed up from Ceiling Jockey himself. I opened it to find only 4 messages from him, dated from 2006, 2007, 2011, and 2015. Ceiling Jockey, June 7, 8:52 p.m. 2006. I bet you regret it now. Lol. Ceiling Jockey, March 12, 12:51 a.m. 2007. I am sorry I got angry. I do not think you deserved this. Ceiling Jockey, August 25, 5:35 p.m. 2011. Congratulations on marrying her. She is a good woman. I am glad something came from this for you. Please MSG me when you can. I want to give you something. Ceiling Jockey, July 3, 2:10 p.m. 2015. It has been a long time. I am sorry for being so angry. It was not your fault. Check your bank act. It's all I can do to apologize. I called the bank. There had been 3 deposits in the last 48 hours totaling just under $2 million, so I did the only sensible thing to do. I replied to Ceiling Jockey with a simple, apology accepted. Thank you. Uninstalled the Wallhorse IM client, and scheduled to pay off the last of my medical bills. I'm planning to take my wife on vacation somewhere overseas, but I needed to get the last of this off of my mind before we went. I couldn't let this stew in my head for any longer. As I type all this out, I have become painfully aware how much has already slipped away from me about that life. I can't remember the names of the people I worked with. The months go by in a blur with only a few notable dates and milestones. By the time I get back from this vacation, I probably won't even remember what Al's face looked like or the layout of the website itself. I think that might be for the best, though.